Hello, it is Dale here. In this video I'm going to tell you what the order flow software shows and what all those colors and tables and all this stuff you can see on your screen is all about. So what you see before you is the order flow I developed. Currently I'm using it on the futures on the euro. It's always best to use the order flow on futures. It's way better than on forex because futures is centralized market. So this is the futures for the euro. I'm using it on a 30-minute chart. I also like to use it on a 5-minute chart, but you can use it on any chart you want. So you can use it for 1-minute charts or different type of charts like volume bars or Renko bars. It doesn't really matter. It works with all types of charts and with all kinds of time frames, but the order flow is best used for intraday or scalp trading. So what you see before you are basically candles and volumes created within those candles. So this is a candle. As you can see, it is a red candle, so it is a selling candle. It opened in here and the candle closed in here, and those were the volumes which got created within this 30-minute candle. All right, the volumes which got created and traded on this side, this is the bid side, are in here, the left side, and the volumes which got traded on the offer are on the right side. Right? So this footprint shows the volumes which got traded in the last 30 minutes on a bid and on the ask side. Now let me open up two screenshots because there is one really important thing which you need to understand before you start trading with the order flow. This is essential, so if you don't get it at the first try, then I suggest you watch this part again because it is really essential. Alright, so let's first have a look at this first screenshot. It shows a footprint. This is the bid side, this is the offer side, and when there is an aggressive seller, then the aggressive seller enters with a market order. That's how you tell it is an aggressive seller. All right. So if you go into the market and sell with a market order, you are considered an aggressive seller. And this selling order you place in the market will show in here on the bid side. Aggressive sellers, all right, in here. So if you sell one contract, for example, at this price level, then it will show in here one contract in here. All right. Now, if you buy for a market order, you are considered an aggressive buyer. You are aggressive because you bought with the market order. So if you buy 5 lots, for example, for this price level, there'll be 5 in here. All right. This is the aggressive sellers and aggressive buyers. Now, let's have a look at the second screenshot, this one. And this is where it all gets tricky and a little bit more complicated. So if you enter a trade with a limit order, you basically wait for the price to come to your trading level. You have a pending limit order there, and when the price hits this level, you get filled. All right, you get into the position. So you entered with a limit order and you are passive. You are waiting until the price reaches your trading level. So if you buy with limit order, for example, at this price level, you will show on the bid side. This is the tricky part because you are passive buyer, and passive buyers are shown on the bid side. If you look at the footprint, for example, this one, then this left side is the bid side. All right, so those guys who buy with limit orders are shown there in the bid side. Now, on the other hand, if you are a passive seller, you sell with limit order, and if your order gets filled, it will show on the offer side. All right, so passive sellers are on the offer side. Now, The tricky part with order flow is, as you can see, on the bid side, you can have aggressive sellers as well as passive buyers. And on the offer side, you can have aggressive buyers as well as passive sellers. So it doesn't mean that if, for example, there's a big number in here on the offer side, that this automatically means that those are aggressive buyers. You need to read the context of the chart. I'll show you that, so you'll be more or less able to tell whether this is aggressive buyer or a passive seller. Alright, but it doesn't automatically mean that this guy or those guys are aggressive buyers just because they are on the offer side. They can as well be passive sellers, alright? Because both show on the offer side. And all those guys from the bid, they show in here. Alright, hope it makes sense. If it doesn't, please just rewatch this part, and hopefully after that it will start making some sense. Alright, so remember, it's important to distinguish aggressive buyers or sellers and passive. Aggressive go with market order, passive enter the trade with a limit order. So this is for the bid and ask part of the order flow. This is probably the most complicated and hard to understand thing about the whole order flow business. The rest is going to be easier. So if you look at the cells, then for example, this cell right there shows that at this price, at 1.0960, there were 0 contracts traded at the bid and 4 contracts traded at the offer side. Now in here, at this price, which is 1.0959, there were 29 contracts traded at the bid side, 57 on the offer side. That's what the order flow shows you. Now, if the cell is green, then it means that there were heavier volumes on the offer side. 57 is bigger than 29. Alright, that's why it is green. If it's red, like for example in here, then the bid side is bigger than the offer side. 24 is bigger than 2. Alright, now you've also probably noticed that some of the colors are lighter, some of them are darker. For example here, this is dark red. It means that there were pretty heavy volumes traded within this cell, so that's why it's so dark. Also, for example, in here, this dark green means that there were heavy volumes traded there. You can see that, right? 519 at the bid side and 526 on the offer. That's quite a lot if you compare it to the rest of the numbers in the candle. So the rule is, the lighter the cell, the lower the volumes, and the darker the cell, the heavier the volumes within the cell. Alright, now those are the candles. Green candles are buying candles, red candles are selling candles. This is where the candle opened. This is the wick of the candle. And this is the close of the candle. Alright? Again, this is the open of the candle. This is the close of the candle. So this is the body. And this is the wick of the candle. Now the numbers below, those numbers, they show delta. You can actually change what they show, but in the default setting, which I use, is that they show you delta. And what delta means is that it counts the difference from the bid side and the offer side. So if you look, for example, in here, at this footprint, then all those numbers together will give you some number. then all those numbers on the offer side will give you a number, and the difference between those two is this number, is delta. Which is a pretty important thing actually, so that's why it gets printed in the chart, so you can tell right away whether the buyers were more aggressive or less aggressive than the sellers within the given footprint. Usually when the candle is red, when it is selling candle like in here, the delta is negative because the sellers are stronger. And usually when the candle is green, goes upwards, it's buying candle or buying footprint, then the delta is positive. This is not a hard rule, it's just how it usually is. I'll talk about this a little bit more when I talk about delta divergences, but more on that later, alright? Just remember, it shows delta. It is the difference between bid and ask in the given footprint. Now, another thing are those blue numbers. They can occur both on bid and also on the ask side. Those are imbalances. This means that one side of the market is way stronger and way more aggressive than the other side of the market. Now let me zoom it a bit so you can see better. Now, when you read order flow, you actually compare diagonally, like this. So you compare number 18 with number 6. You compare number 7 with 45. Now, if the number in here is 3 or more times bigger, this is the default setting, you can change it, but if it's 3 or more times bigger than this number, then it gets colored in blue. So 45 is more than 3 times bigger than 7, so it gets colored in blue, and this means that this place the buyers were more aggressive than the sellers, way more aggressive, more than 3 times more aggressive. Also, for example, here 28 is more than 3 times bigger than 4. 224 is more than 3 times bigger than 72. If you look, for example, in here, 82 is more than 3 times bigger than 21. That's why it gets colored in blue, and it tells us that the sellers were way more aggressive in here. Now, what I like to see in my trading, what I like to look for is when there is a cluster of more than 3, like in here. This shows buyers way more aggressive than the sellers, and as you can see, because there is the cluster 1, 2, 3, it prints this thing, which should work as a support. I'll talk about it more in the strategy section, but it will highlight this price area, and basically when the price hits this area again, it should work as a support, because there were really strong buyers in here, right? You can tell by the imbalances stacked like this, right? So when there is a 3 or more, the price gets highlighted like this, and I call it the imbalance cluster. This is buying imbalance cluster because the buyers were more aggressive than the sellers. Now, another thing which my order flow software automatically draws are those lines, like this red line in here. You can make it wider in the settings if you want, and it shows unfinished business. Now, usually the footprint looks like this. One side is always 0. There should always be 0. Like in here, in here. This is how footprint should end. This is how a successful auction ends, because footprint is nothing else than just an auction. But if there's a failed auction, or unfinished business, there are numbers on both sides. And the market usually tests those levels. So that's why it prints a line like this, and it will print this line until this failed auction or this unfinished business is tested. As in here. It got tested, and that's it. Alright. Another unfinished business in here. As you can see, another line is there. Let me have a look if I can find some more of those. Yeah, right here. 8 traded on the bid, 32 traded on the offer. So we have green dotted line, and this is where the price tested that level and created successful auction. Right? This is the successful auction. Now the next thing which I want to cover is the summary, which is right here at the bottom. This is the summary. I'm not using all of it, but for the purposes of this video, I turned all those on. You can do that in here. But right now I'll leave all those on and comment on all of them, and then I'll tell you what I actually use. Alright, so this table in here, this is the summary, and the first thing it shows you is the ask, and it tells you for every footprint what the sum of the volumes at ask was. So 13 plus 54 plus 13 plus 5 plus 20, count all those together, it will give you 237. The bid works the same, O plus 19 plus 13 plus 12 and so on. It is this number, the 189. As you can see, the bid is 189, ask is 237. So the total delta, which is bid minus ask, this is the delta, is 48. It is positive delta. Maximum delta in this footprint was 48. Minimum delta was minus 18. I'm not really using those in my trading. Now the cumulative delta, this means sum of all the deltas throughout the whole day. So you go 38 minus 20 plus 61 plus 48 minus 32. This will give you the cumulative delta. It's pretty useful, but it's not that useful when you have it in a table like this. It's way more useful when you have it as an indicator. And actually I have an indicator which is part of this overflow software. This shows you the cumulative delta in here. It's way more useful like this, because you can search for divergences between the price and the delta. I'll show you how to use it later, but I'm not really using the cumulative delta in here. I prefer to using it as a separate line indicator. Now then there is the cumulative delta slash volume. Never used it, but some people use it, so I also included it in the software. Then there is the volume in each footprint, so all the volumes traded within this footprint are here. 688. In this footprint it would be 439. This is pretty important thing. I have this toggled on. And the last thing is cumulative volume. It's not really visible because there is NinjaTrader logo and you can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of the NinjaTrader logo. It's a bit funny, but that's how it is. You can't get rid of it, but this is the cumulative volume, and it shows how the volumes are accumulated throughout the whole day. So basically it sums all those volumes. This number will only rise as the day progresses. Alright, so all those volumes will give you the sum which is in here. I'm not really using this one in my trading. You can toggle it on or off. So let me show you how I actually have it. I don't use the ask, I don't use the bid, I use the delta, but I don't use the max delta or the min delta. For cumulative delta, I have the line indicator, so I'm not using this cumulative delta. I'm also not using this. I do use the volume, but I don't use the cumulative volume. So it all shrank down to just two information panels. First one is the delta. It shows me the delta in a given footprint. The second one is the volume, which shows me the volumes in that given footprint. So those two are the only pieces of information I actually use in this summary bar. Alright, now another thing I want to cover is the content of the cells. You can change the content in here. Now it shows bid and ask, but it can also show you delta, the difference between bid and ask. If it's green, then there were more buyers than sellers. If it's red, there were more aggressive sellers than aggressive buyers. I'm not really using this one too much, but what I really like to use is the volumes. It shows you the number of contracts which were traded at the given price level. So basically it's the sum of the bid and the ask. And I found this really important and also very useful. And that's why I use it quite a lot in my trading, because sometimes it's quite hard to tell whether there were buyers or sellers at the bid or ask, because of the reasons I showed at the beginning of this video. But when you switch to volumes, you don't have that problem. You just see where the volumes were heavy and where the volumes were not so heavy. And this is actually very important information. So if you look, for example, at this footprint, the place where the footprint is darker is where the volumes were heavy. You can tell also by the numbers, but usually you want to read the footprint chart quickly, so you just look at the shades. Alright, that's why I made it like this. The higher numbers, the darker the shades are. So this is heavy volume area. Also, the price level where the heaviest volumes got traded is also in a black frame, like in here. As you can see, there is black frame in every footprint. I call it the heavy volume knot. You can see the heavy volume knots also if you switch to bid and ask or any other setting. Those are always there. Alright, so that's the volumes. And also there is another setting which is diagonal delta, and this is probably more useful than the delta, because the diagonal delta compares those two numbers. That's how it actually should be compared, like diagonally. Alright, so that's why it's called diagonal delta. It compares those two numbers and it gives you the result. Alright, bid minus ask. But I'm not using this one too often. As I said, mostly I use the bid and the ask, usually on a 5-minute or a 30-minute chart. And what I also really like to use is the volume footprints. I use those also on 5-minute charts and 30-minute charts. Now, if you want to use the order flow on Forex, you can do so. It's not as precise as on futures, but it is doable. You can use it. The Forex data feed won't give you bid and ask. It will only give you volumes. So if you are doing order flow analysis on Forex, then what you want to use is this setting, right? Now the last thing left to cover is the left side of the screen, and it shows the volume profile of the whole day. This bluish color shows volumes traded at ask. Those throughout the whole day. And the red ones shows bid. All those throughout the whole day. Alright? It's standard fixed daily profile, nothing special. And then those numbers just give you the volumes. As you can see, they are also graduated, so you can tell right away where the volumes were the heaviest. For example, in here or in here. But you can tell that also if you look at the volume profile. Alright, so that's what the overflow shows you. At first sight, it may seem like a lot of information, but give it some time and you'll see that it's pretty simple and it will become quite intuitive for you. Alright, so don't worry. I know that if you see the overflow for the first time, this may seem like too much information to grasp, but it's not that complicated. And you'll see that especially in the trading strategies where you only focus on some things the overflow is telling you and not necessarily to all the information. Alright, so don't worry, with some time it will only get simpler. Now the next video is going to be on the settings of the volume profile, how you can set it up, all the visual things you can change within the chart. So I'll see you in there.